Welcome to the Z Truth Podcast, where we have transparent, real, and thought-provoking conversations. Your host is Akira Casado, the author of 15 social media secrets that pay. So let's get real, get honest, and get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another powerful episode of Z Truth Podcast. My name is Akira Casado, and I am your host. And I'm excited to be here tonight. I know that this is going to be a touchy topic. I've tied in the very viral case that's happening right now with the state against Diddy, and I promise you this episode was already in place before all of this happened. It just was like some serendipity. But as I promised before, these last few episodes of this season is going to be epic. It's going to be no guests, no filters, just me, you, and the truth. It's raw, uncut conversation straight from the heart to your ears. And sometimes the most powerful dialogues start with self-reflection. And one of the topics that I'm not the proudest that I can talk about without even thinking is the topic for today, which is love bombs, red flags, and us really discovering and not discovering, but having the conversation of, are you being played or pursued? Because I do believe that we are in a time where things are a little bit different when it comes to the arena of dating. And we have to be very mindful and become more emotionally intelligent to avoid certain things that we could avoid, right? And that's what really this last bit of shows is really talking about going into the summer before we go on into our break for 2025, and then we open back up with a brand new season for our fall. And so let me get through our announcements again. If you want to listen, I want to first encourage you before this show to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. These shows are always live on YouTube, exclusively on YouTube for the visual, but you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and you can see our clips on all platforms: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, you know it. TikTok has been one of the most instrumental platforms to have dialogues, and that's really what the podcast is meant to do. It's meant to create conversations that cure, that heal, and that get us to a different way of thinking, And I can't believe I'm saying this still, but I've reached an age where some people can consider me an auntie, and I just want to give back. I want to give conversations and thought-provoking conversations that are going to help us to become, on another level. And so that's really what this is about. So let me get through announcements. Again, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, share. I believe that this is going to be very impactful. And not to use Cassie as an example, but it just was serendipity that these particular real-time events that were happening are in alignment to this particular topic. But before I get into the topic at hand and we get through our show, I wanted to invite you out to Pick and Pro's next event. I will be speaking on this event, and that's not the only reason why I'm telling you to come. Pick and Pro's is another podcast that has nothing to do with what Z Truth talks about, but it's a sports podcast. It's a father and son dynamic duo where they talk about sports all year round. And one of the things that I love about them is that they are very transparent and real about sports, right? But most importantly, they are sponsors for my flag football team, or our flag football team, Gridiron Gang. They have been sponsors for quite some time now. And so we want to invite you out to this event. Again, not just because I'm speaking, but that is another reason to come out. But it is going to be at King's in North Raleigh on the 7th of June. It's coming up in just a couple weeks. I promise you, if you come to this event, you are going to be blessed. The tickets are only $30, but it is a full access to the buffet, to bowling all night, and also exposed to the live podcast. So the actual podcast, like right now, if this was a live show, we would all be here, right? And so that's basically what's going down on June the 7th. So I want to encourage you guys to go to pickandpros.com so you can get your tickets. And that way you can definitely be in the building with not just Pick 'em Pros, but with some of the most influential sports enthusiasts in the nation. I would say the state, but he flies in people from all across the country to be at these live podcasting shows. So not only is it a great place to network, you're going to have a lot of fun, and it's going to be one of those events you don't want to miss. Then the very next day on June 8th from 2 to 4:30 in Raleigh, North Carolina, I will be hosting a class called Master and Monetize Your Media. This is through zglobalmedia.com, and we are going to really be going in for these 2.5 hours of helping people to literally just take their content and give them the tools and secrets that we actually teach our clients and use for our own platforms. And so if you don't know it, I am an author of 15 social media secrets that pay. And so these are the secrets that we will be teaching out of. If you don't have a copy of the book, go check us out on Amazon. It is available on Amazon where you can get it shipped immediately. That Prime special. And I literally give all of my secrets here on how I actually continue to create a following and to, generate income from it as well, because Facebook or Meta, which is all of them, do pay, not just to help expose your business, but also to literally learn how to get paid from the content that you create. So we're going to basically turn content into coins, and we're going to talk about that as well. So let's get into it. Let's get into the topic. And the reason I love podcasting, because it allows me to express parts of me that I normally don't share online. If you do follow me on my social media, you know that I'm always having fun. I'm talking about football, or I'm talking about giving inspirational messages. And this side of me, I get to share in some form and fashion, but not really. So we're going to get into this, and we want to talk about love bombs and red flags, and are you being played or pursued? And so the very first T is, let's call out what fake love really is. And so I believe there are many different ways of identifying this. And one of the things that are very telling, I believe, is speed. I believe that if something is pure, it's not going to have to be fast. And I think that's one key sign. If it's a rush, then maybe you should scale back if that's what you're looking for. Because first of all, you got to know, what am I looking for? Are you looking for someone to just date? Are you just having fun? Or are you looking for an actual relationship or life partner? And so if you're looking for a life partner and it's something that's going fast, this is not saying that every single relationship that goes from zero to marriage in like 6 months is not is an unhealthy relationship, right? But I am saying that that could be a key sign of, wait, maybe this is not real, okay? Because anything that's worth having is worth exploring. It's worth trying to figure out or allowing it to develop versus it being in haste, right? If like, and I'm going to give some my the real behind this, right? Some things I've experienced shortly, but like, in my opinion, when I look back on situations that I was in dating, the faster it was going, the more of a love bomb it was. And let me explain what love bombing is, okay? I'm gonna actually give an example of the real definition so that we're all on the same page, right? I got it right here. But let me just give you the definition that comes up. So love bombing is lavishing someone with attention or affection, especially in order to influence or manipulate them. And so you might be wondering, well, to manipulate or to influence them, why do you have to lavish them with attention? Because always remember this saying: grown men die for it, babies cry for it. What is it? It's attention. One of the most underrated feelings and emotions that we underestimate, that we all desire, is the want and need for attention, the want and need of attention from the opposite sex, or in this day and age, I guess you have to say from someone that you like, right? And so when you have that desire or that want to feel that, and it's given to you in a way that you've never experienced before, then it can become almost addictive. It can become something that you desire more and want more and more and more and more of. And in a healthy relationship or a healthy, emotionally intelligent person, this isn't a bad thing. But unfortunately, we do live in a world where these things sometimes, in many cases, are not coming from a place of good. And the reason I'm saying that is because whenever it's, because let me just say this: too much of a good thing is never a good thing. So I remember listening to not Jim Rome. Jim Rome is my favorite philosopher, but Zig Ziglar is my second favorite philosopher. And I will never forget that he was giving this speech. And he was talking about how too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. And the example that he gave was that, let's say you're drowning. Okay, I want you to imagine that. Imagine you being in a boat and you're drowning, right? And someone pulls up in another boat and they throw you one end of that rope. Let's say this is the rope, right? Let me see if I got something that's more flimsy. This is the rope, right? And you need to get on the other end of this sock. Why is there a sock on my desk? I don't know, but that's not the point. But if they need to get back into out of the water, but you decide, let me throw this end of the rope. Let me just say it again. If you're drowning in the middle of the ocean and someone throws you one end of the rope, that's good. But if they throw the other end, then that's bad, which is the best example that I can give you on what too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. And so let's think about this in some of our experiences in romantic relationships, or even sometimes friendships. If you're spending all of your time, I mean, every moment and second of your life speaking to this person, texting this person, they're giving you an unrealistic amount of attention, especially if you're an adult with responsibilities. That could be considered a red flag or a love bomb, because what's happening, and if you allow it, right? Like if you don't say, hey, babe, it's been great talking to you, but I got to get some rest. Now, don't get me wrong. In the beginning, when you're infatuated and you like the person, I don't think it's anything wrong with having those late night conversations where you wake up and you like, damn, I need another cup of coffee because I spent all night speaking to this person. But it cannot become habitual, because it's not, nothing in a relationship should become habitual if it's not realistic in regards to the upkeep. In other words, if you can't keep doing this long term, then at some point you do need to create that boundary, because you're creating a false sense of what it is. And then later, you don't want it to be like, well, she's changing up or he's changing up on me. No. But when this happens, this can be considered the process or beginning stages of a love bomb. Now, the reason why it's called love bombing is because not only is it lavish, let's say in the beginning you meet someone and this guy is throwing expensive gifts at you and taking you on trips in your first 3 months of the relationship. or they're like, let's move in with each other, and it's been like 6 months. These are acts of lavishing love, and it can be considered a love bomb, right? Because number one, it has been clinically proven that when you are in love, you are seriously not the same person. I'm not saying you're clinically dumb, but you literally don't have the same receptors in your decision making when you're in love versus when you're not in love. And so you have to be mindful of that it's a powerful thing to be in love or in lust, because they can be very similar in what it feels like, right? And this is another reason to refrain from a lot of sexual activity very early on, because the moment that you get it in, and if it's good, y'all, you know how that goes. Sometimes you can become very much controlled in the appetite of the sexual desire. So that's why a lot of these love gurus, or not love gurus, but relationship gurus, like one of my girls I love, shout out to, she is Phyla. She talks about like this shouldn't happen in your first 90 days to 6 months, if not longer, as long as you can hold off. Because when you add that component, when you add sex to the component, or add sex to the equation, rather, it definitely changes things. It makes you, I don't know if it makes women less valuable in that sense, but it makes the chase different, because now if that person didn't really want more than that, then they kind of accomplished what they set out to, right? And in the beginning, because you have so many representatives going at the same time, it's best to refrain. Even though I know there's many relationships who've even blossomed from one night stands. So I'm not saying that this is a rule of thumb for everyone. I'm just saying generally, this is something that I believe is wise to literally refrain from that. So again, repeating the definition of what that is, a love bomb is very much um, non-stop. Like it's an over the top attempt to prove that this person wants your attention. Okay. Um, even like, let me see, let's say even to the point where you're made to feel guilty if your commitment and your schedule does not fit into that person's schedule, or it just becomes a lot. And because clinically you're like slow in the moment, because you're in love and infatuated, you don't really pick up on these things. So I'm gonna keep it real, because I know I've been love bombed before. I was in a relationship where in the first 3 months we were in a different country. You know what I'm saying? And or maybe it was 5 months or something like that. But even the talk of another going to another country together in such a short period of time is just not realistic, right? And the reason it's not realistic, because how many times have you traveled with friends and then your relationship changes? Because traveling is a lot. That's like, you don't want to just travel with anybody. So to do that with someone, number one, you also are inviting the sexual component, especially if they pay for it, especially if they're offering like, hey, I want to take you here, 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 and here, and we're going to do it. It's all on me. The expectation of the sexual component becomes higher, right? And so, like for me, in my situation, we were traveling immediately, and we were talking about moving in together within the first less than the first year. And we both also wasn't alone. We both had children. And so when you have children and other people to consider, that's not wise, right? And so when these things were happening, because it never happened to me, I usually was in relationships where I wouldn't say I was the breadwinner, but I wasn't in relationships with men who had the means that could do this. And so in this particular relationship, it was kind of like, wow, this person is really into me, because, you know, who would do that unless they love you? Who would do this unless they see what it is that I've been trying to tell all these men that they didn't see, right? And so it kind of strokes your ego. It kind of makes you feel on top of the world. And in reality, you getting set up for the you getting you getting set up. And so um and it's not set up like, yes, it's set up, okay, because in love bombs and red flags, the reason that it's so over the top is because what ends up happening is when it goes in the mask of the relationship, not the person, just the person, but the relationship is knocked off, you will begin to always revert back to when it was the way it was. So, in other words, I remember when it started getting bad and you started noticing things that were like toxic, you go, well, maybe it's just a bad day. And maybe it'll be like how it was before. Or maybe it will get back to when it was when he was doing this and doing that. And then what happens if the person ends up being, um, if you're an empathic person, right? And you're a person that attracts people that need healing, right? And if you need to heal, because you know what they say, hurt people, or oh, people can sense, the opposite sex can sense when someone is in a state of an opening, meaning, like, I'll give you an example. When I wasn't single, and I would like go to certain places and conduct transactions and all of that, no one would try to talk to me. You know what I mean? No one would ever reach out or be like, "Hey, girl, you look good." You know, men wouldn't say many things to me, right? But the moment that I became single, it was like, did I have like an open wound or a sign on my forehead that said, "Hey, guys, I'm single now"? Because everyone can sense a difference. Because at the end of the day, I think we forget we are kind of like animals. We have these things called pheromones. We give off certain vibes and energy that we wouldn't when we are not available, right? Because ultimately that's just natural. Naturally, we want to co-create. We want to be in the midst of the opposite sex, right? And so we give off these things, and that's some of the energies that we feel that's going to make you attractive to the other people, right? And so I say all of that to say that um when these things happen, and when it's so over the top, and later on when you realize, wait, I don't know this person, I don't haven't really gotten the time to really say, okay, well, how is this person in every season of their life? And that's just where I've come to in my overall dating, is like, I need to see this person when times are good, when times are bad, when times are difficult, and when times are sad. Because when these different seasons in our lives happen, because they're going to happen. My mentor used to tell me all the time, everybody is in a different phase of life. They're either in a problem, just got out of a problem, or they're headed to a problem. And you have to just understand that's just the cycle of life, right? And so when you understand that, then you want to give time to really discover if this person is someone that can be on my team or I can be on their team. Because then you can assess if this is just a friendship, or is this a long term thing, or if you're like, look, I'm just looking for a good time. I'm not saying whether that should be your direction or not, but we go through those different phases. Then you can assess that for yourself, right? And so and also let me just say this. I don't believe in red flags anymore. I don't. I believe in red stops. When I say, because when I play football, a lot of you guys know that, and when they say it's a flag on a play, the play gets a penalty, you get pulled back a little bit, but then you can literally continue playing the game, right? And so I don't think, especially in the beginning, if it's something that's making you pause, maybe it shouldn't be a pause, and maybe it should be a stop. And it might not be a stop in the sense of, let me just completely cut this human being off, because I do believe that I might have gotten too good at that. Like, it's like, oh, nope, uh-uh. Right? But just cut off on the idea of courtship, right? If that's even a thing today, right? It seems like no one does that these days. But so yes. So understanding that later in the process of how it works in a toxic relationship or a relationship in that of with someone who might be considered that has a personality disorder like narcissism, or it doesn't have to be even narcissism. It could be just a lack of empathy, right? You don't have to necessarily be a full blown narcissist to have a lack of empathy, but it might just not be a good fit. Because y'all got to understand this. Like, something that took me a long time to understand is that oil and water will never mix, but they're both still essential. Meaning that sometimes there's not even nothing wrong with that person or that person. They just don't fit together. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has a person that might fit their what they're about, right? Or some levels of this person might not be good for this, right? But just because you're not good for me doesn't mean you're not good for her. And maybe this relationship is setting you up to get the tools you need to make it better for the next one, right? And that's okay. But I just want to emphasize that real love, I think, is developed. I really believe today in my mind, it's not even something that's an emotion. I think it's a choice. Do you decide to love this person, and do you decide to really want to be with this person? Because at the end of the day, it is something that I think does go deeper than a feeling. It's like, if I'm in this situation and if I am in need of someone to take care of this, is this the right person? Do I really want to explore the idea of forever with this person? And do we even have the same kind of moral compass? You know what I'm saying? These kind of things take time to develop and to understand and learn from someone, because at we're all meeting the person, the representative. It's very rare you meet someone and they're just okay with just showing who they are. Because a lot of us are living life underneath a mask. You know what I mean? Especially when you're thinking you're trying to impress someone versus impressing upon them of who you just are. Me, if I'm being real and I'm sticking on the real topic, I literally, it took me years to be okay with just being me. And even sometimes I still kind of like backslide into, oh my God, this is this the right thing to say? Is this the wrong thing to say? Is this the right thing to say? And the reality is, you can never say the wrong thing to the right person. I'm gonna repeat that. You can never say the wrong thing to the right person, especially if it's you. You know what I'm saying? If you peel back the potato or peel back the banana or whatever fruit or vegetable you want to use, if it's you, then it's okay. And it's that simple. But of course, when you are giddy and you're like excited, sometimes you get caught up in that whole idea. And I mean, I used to be horrible. I mean, kind of circumventing every moment and every second of responding and how to respond, and if this is the right thing, and is this the right style, and how do I want to put it. Don't get me wrong, we're supposed to be attractive people to the opposite sex, right? And so you're going to dress up for your dates. You're going to do certain things to be appealing. And we don't just do that for relationships. We do that when we go to jobs. We do that when we are trying to represent ourselves, right? It's nothing wrong with that. But if it's to a point where it's confusion, then just go with the other part of it, which is probably no versus yes, right? And so, yeah, so that's me being transparent to say that I have had those experiences. And that's why this whole case with like the Diddy and Cassie thing, a lot, again, this topic was selected weeks ago. All right. And it just made me want to talk about it more when I saw a lot of the responses to people when I'm reading the comments about, Cassie revealing so much about the relationship between her and Diddy. And the sad part is, a lot of people were like, a lot of men and even some women were like, well, she knew what she was doing. She was of age. She was this, she was that. Now, first of all, imagine only being 19 and imagine talking to someone who has 20 years experience more than you on this earth, and they're a mega superstar. Number one, there isn't such thing as like starstruck. And so imagine being starstruck, in love, being lavish with the gifts, love bomb, getting all the attention that you can possibly be exposed to, and then thinking that, like, oh, this person is really supposed, like, do you guys not remember what your brain was like 19 at the age of 19? Granted, I was a little mature because I had both my sons at that age, but my 19-year-old mind is nothing compared to where my mind is at 40. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would be a damn fool to think that it's no difference. And you sound very foolish online. If no one told you this, it's going to be Z Truth Podcast. You sound like a goddamn idiot if you think that this girl could not have been manipulated into the things in which she's telling us she's been exposed to. And, again, these red flags um, can sometimes not be seen. And unfortunately, with her, she was such a young, impressionable mind that I believe every single thing that she said was not just. It was just hard. I think it's just horrible. And I just want to say this. This is what I'm gonna say. Another thing I'm gonna say about this whole situation, and that it's so telling, is that we don't really know what toxic is. We really don't. We really don't fucking know what toxic is, because for people to publicly be okay with expressing that the question of whether or not she's even a victim or not is mind-boggling to me, especially if you have a daughter. And especially if you're a man and you're older and you know how easy it is to um, influence another human being. Like, I always bring this guy up, and I know people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I don't care. I always think about Jim Jones and how this one individual was able to influence almost 1,000 people. And these people were not 19 years old. These people were grown, old, young, in between, believers, non-believers, and he convinced almost 1,000 freaking people to fucking kill themselves. Excuse my goddamn expression. So if one man can convince almost 1,000 people, that you're trying to tell me one man can't convince one girl who probably have had no other boyfriends or experiences in love. And obviously, if her parents at 19 just wasn't, they probably even was starstruck. Oh my God, it's Diddy. He can't be that bad. But anyway, I think she was not only a victim, I think she was definitely manipulated. And I think she experienced this process of love bombing. And I believe that he is more than just a narcissist. I think that he's also probably a psychopath. You know what I'm saying? Like, borderline a psychopath, because of the fact that he does have daughters. And, usually sometimes when you have kids, it kind of makes you think of things a little differently. Like, for me, do I get hit on by younger people? Yes, a lot of people think I'm younger than 40, but in my brain, it's hard for me to even conceive talking to someone in their in their early 20s, because I have sons that age, right? So it doesn't even appeal to me. But I mean, everybody not like that, especially, But let's move on. Let's move on. So my unbiased opinion is that I want to make it clear that both men and women can be manipulators. They both can be victims. It's not like this is saying that it's only men that do this to women. I'm only always giving you the perspective because I am a woman, and I can only give you a perspective of a woman. And I'm never going to try to be in the mind of a man. If you want that, then ask a man, right? But I know that both men and women can be manipulators. I know that if you have had experiences of being manipulated, one of the hardest things to do is not become what you have experienced. You know what I mean? Like, I used to tell people all the time, especially my friends, I had a Black Widow stage where I didn't care. If I hurt your feelings, I hurt your goddamn feelings. And I had to go through a process of not developing the very tools that I was taught through my experiences or the individuals that manipulated me to not actually do that to other people. And that only comes with empathy, that only comes with healing, that only comes with really recognizing and taking some parts of the responsibility when it comes to how these things happen, right? But when you know better, you do better. Okay. And sometimes you don't know until you know, right? Because when I look back on things, in relationships and toxic things and how they develop and become what they are, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen um just like that. You know what I mean? Because if it was abrupt, you would notice it faster. Let me give you an example. I remember, so if you know me and you really know me and you've ever been invited to my home, one of the things that I have a no it is a policy that you probably would talk about at my grave, is I don't like shoes on my carpet. Okay. I don't like shoes on my damn carpet. All right. I don't like the idea of people walking outside, walking in, and then stepping on carpet. Hardwood floors are a little different for me because, you can clean up hardwood floors a lot different than you can carpet. Carpet holds dirt. And so if you walk in my house, take off your goddamn shoes. Right. And so one of the very small things that one of my exes in a relationship did was they would challenge that very concrete, no budge policy that I have about me, right? And most of all of my friends, I don't never had a friend or a relative that really challenged it but him. And it was just like, oh, he tried to convince me, or he said it in a way that in the moment it made sense to why he didn't feel like he had to take his shoes off. And as much as that seems like a small thing, it actually was the beginning of the depictment of me, right? The depictment of what my boundaries are, right? Because at the end of the day, that's a boundary. At the end of the day, that's a non-negotiable in my head. You know, I work from home. One of the things that I do is home daycare, and every parent that I've ever had knows this. You know what I'm saying? It's a non-negotiable. And so when you are in a relationship with someone who's a manipulator and abuser, they will slowly start depicting your boundaries, right? And once you let down the first guard, it's going to become, and it's not like it's not abrupt, right? So when you knock down that first wall, it's going to be easier to knock down the second wall, right? Now let's say, for example, I don't eat meat, and so another thing that my ex would do was he would keep trying to offer, why don't you just try this chicken? Why don't you just try this piece of beef? I mean, it's not going to kill you. And now, mind you, I never brought that down. I never let that boundary cross. But it was weird. And if you, when I look back, like, why would someone keep offering you something that you don't like? That I don't eat fucking chicken. So why do you keep on offering me chicken? And so if I would have done that, oh my gosh, that's how these other walls begin to come down. Like, I saw an article with the Cassie girl where she was saying like, oh, he told me he was into voyeurism, which is the act of a man or a woman finding pleasure in watching you be intimate or have sex with other people, right? Now, you might have never in a million years thought, man, I would get it in front of my partner, right? But because the person keeps asking, they're going to keep asking. And if you love me, if anytime somebody says this phrase, if you love me, dot dot dot, that is a no-go, because it should never be, if you love me you would do this, if you love me you would say this, if you love me you would. These are all like signs of run, right? But again, none of these things are ever abrupt. I mean, yes, abrupt. These things are like slowly, like, Then sometimes they will challenge you um, in ways of, if you're going to choose them, they put you in situations where they make you choose them over your friends, them over your work, them over your sleep, them over your hobbies. When you start losing yourself, it's a dangerous place to be. Take it from me, because I've been there. Have you been there? Have you ever literally lost yourself? And when you lose yourself, you literally feel like you don't know who you are. It's like, this is your body, and who you are is like over there, right? And so, you stop doing things that you love to do. I would never forget when my oldest son would say, "Mom, my mom knows how to cook." And for some reason, the person started getting in my head like, he taught me how to cook. No, you didn't. You taught me how to cook your food, but you didn't teach me how to cook, right? But a lot of people like, well, how could someone really make you lose yourself? Again, it's a process that happens. And the younger you are, this is the thing, y'all. We need to be taught, and we need to make it more normal for women and men to understand self before entering into a relationship. And the reason I say this is because if you don't understand self, you don't understand what your likes, dislikes. I don't know if y'all ever remember that movie Runaway Bride, but in the movie Runaway Bride, what she used to do is, she didn't really know herself, and so whatever the guy liked, she liked. Like, there was only the one guy who finally she met, who took the time. She did end up running off on her wedding, um but he took the time to like sit down, and he made she used to say, well, what kind of eggs you like? And then, no, he would ask her, what kind of eggs you like? And then she would say, what kind of eggs do you like? She'd say fried. So she liked fried eggs when she was in this relationship. She liked scrambled eggs when she was in that relationship. And she liked boiled eggs when she was in this relationship. But this one guy made her all the eggs, sat her down, had her eat them, and said, which one is your favorite? To help her really say what she liked. And when you don't know you, then you can be bamboozled by that's a dangerous place to be, to not know self. Okay. It's okay to not know self when you're alone, but if you don't know self and then you go out here and you think you're in love, goddamn, you are a manipulator's paradise. Okay. And so this is my thought-provoking question for this episode is attention always affection? No, we know it's not always affection because of what we're talking about, right? Attention is not always affection. Sometimes attention is just what it is, attention, for other reasons. Um, would say, let me see. Hi, short quotes. Would love to stay and watch, but gotta go to bed. I will definitely be watching back later. Thank you for that, short quotes. And don't forget to subscribe, and I will do the same. And yes, come back and watch the episode. I was supposed to start this live like 2 hours ago, so don't punish me on that. But yes, please come back and finish it. But anyway, the question is it always affection? It's not. Attention is not always affection. Attention can sometimes be a distraction. Attention can be, and I want to know what y'all think. Don't just let me answer. I want to know, when you see this, if you're listening, if you're watching, is attention always affection? No, it is not. Attention is not always affection, in my opinion. I feel like it can be, um, attention can be affliction. You know what I'm saying? Attention can be affliction as well. And so that's my opinion on that. I don't think it could always be that. And you have to become more in tune with who you are to avoid these things. And let me give you this, because I also feel like a lot of times we get caught up in always trying to pre-diagnose a lot of people. And, I used to even say to myself, I'm always attracting these damn narcissists, right? But the reality is, narcissistic people cannot get, wait, let me say this. Narcissistic people tend to look for people with empathy. And the reason they look for people with empathy is because it's exactly what they lack. And so it's almost like interesting for them. And you got to think of narcissistic people as like, and it's not just narcissistic, it's manipulative people, because all narcissists are manipulative, but not all manipulative people are narcissists. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. All narcissistic people are manipulative, but not all manipulative people are narcissists. Okay. So you can be a manipulator, but you might not necessarily be narcissistic. And in reality, the term narcissistic is something that a lot of people don't understand. Clinically, we all have some form of narcissism, because if you don't know, I'll give a little history on it. Narcissist was a person who, well, the storyline is he was a person that was looking into the lake, fell in love with his own reflection, and he ended up drowning. That's where the term narcissistic comes from. He was looking in the, imagine looking in the pond, you fall in love with your own reflection. And basically the metaphor is that you're so in love and engulfed it with yourself, and you have this over zealous view of self that you end up drowning on your own reflection, right? But what happens is that narcissism is something that we all have levels of it, meaning it's just a sense of love for self, right? But when you have NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder, it gets to a point where your narcissism affects other people, you, your spouse, your kids, your career. Like you are so freaking caught up in your own shit that you don't realize that you're not good with paying bills, you're not good with responsibility, you blame everybody for your mistakes, you are never the freaking problem, right? Which usually ultimately causes a lot of problems in every other area of your life. So that's what narcissism is, right? And so a narcissist will doesn't it, you got to think of them, someone with NPD is a shell. They don't know and have an identity. And so people who are empathic, or people who have empathy, who are healthy in a sense of emotions, are kind of like what they're emulating. And so they will do whatever it takes to mirror this person to get the qualities that they have. They want those qualities, right? And so a person who has healthy boundaries will never be affected by a narcissist, because what happens, a a empath who is also codependent is someone who will be the best target for a narcissistic person, or a person who is a manipulator. Because what happens is, if you are codependent, then your need or your validation is going to come from someone like this person, especially when they take you through the process of the love bombing. And then what happens is, there's this like really cool video that explains it. And I don't want to say it's cool, but it's this guy and a girl, and it's like these two pictures of them. He's giving her love, she's giving it back, and then he's giving her lots of love, lots of love, lots of love, and the heart gets big. So just imagine this heart of him depositing all this love on her, right? And then later, abruptly, he starts giving her little attention, and then smaller attention. And then the attention is like, well, she's like, well, what happened? Like, what happened to all the big love? Maybe if I give him this, he'll keep giving it back to me. If I do more cooking, maybe he will love me more. Maybe if I lose some weight, he will love me more. And I remember not my last relationship, but the one before that was also like a manipulative situation, where you begin to create a situation with this individual where you literally will damn near become a perfect human being, and it still won't be enough. You will never feel, and nothing you will ever do will be enough for a manipulative person. And you got to accept that and understand that. There is no and one of the first things we talked about on this podcast was, what is fake love? Fake love is an exchange. Love is not transactional. It should never be transactional. When I do this, I get that. Now, don't get me wrong. Reciprocity is different than transactional. Reciprocity is just give, give on both ends, right? And not just take, take, take. You know what I'm saying? It's not, it's like playing basketball. You know, if I throw you the ball, you're going to throw it back. That's what reciprocity is. But to think that if you ever in a situation where you are giving, and you are getting very minimum in return, that's not love. Because again, like I said earlier, I believe love is a choice. And if you are choosing to love this person, then even in sometimes when they get on your goddamn nerve, you are going to love them. You're going to do what's right and be for that person. Because the reality is we all have different personalities and we have different emotions, especially us women, because we could be PMSing and the sight of your smell could get on our nerve around that time. But if I know you're hungry and I'm the person that always cooks, then why wouldn't I cook? You know, not saying it's a mandate, but it's just if that's your situation in your relationship, why would that stop? You know what I mean? The moment that we have another thing, and this is not just relationships, this is also friendships. The moment that you have a disagreement, if loyalty goes away, you never had it. Okay? Let me repeat that. If the moment you have a disagreement, or the moment, you know, like that song, the first time I said no, it's like I never said yes. Yeah, I could do a little too, right? So the moment that that happens and loyalty disappears, then that's a problem. Okay? Like that's a serious problem. Okay? And so yeah, I can talk about this topic all day. I'm just letting you know. Like I didn't even realize we're almost at a whole hour, and I literally could talk about this all day. But again, you have to be. So now it's funny because looking forward, I mean, moving forward in my life, it's kind of too easy to cut off things. And I'm gonna just give you an example. I think I might have mentioned this on a podcast, but as small as this might be, and I remember watching a reel with damn it, what is her name? If you're watching, tell me if you know her name. She used to be on, she's such a famous actress. She's like very feisty. But anyway, she was driving in a car and she was like, "Oh my gosh, look how beautiful the trees are." And this particular tree she didn't see often because it was a rare tree, and I forgot the name of it. Let's say it gives off pink roses or something or whatever. And then the guy she was dating or in the car with was like, "You say that about every damn tree." And then she thought, "You gotta go." Like you got to get up out of here. And the funny thing about it is that some people might think that's too much, but I had a similar situation where a lot of you might or might not notice. I don't kill bugs, right? It's very rare you're going to see me kill a bug. Now, if I'm getting bit by a mosquito, I might hit my hand, but I have a system. I know how to get rid of flies. I know how to I'll scrape them up and throw them outside. If I can avoid killing them, I'm going to avoid killing them. And I was on a date one day and this guy got bit by a bug. He smacked his arm, killed the mosquito. I was like, "Oh my God, you killed the bug." I explained to him, I don't really kill bugs like that. He's like, "Why not?" He was like, I was like, "Because I look at it differently. Sometimes I feel like, what if that's my ancestor? Or, what if this is their only life? If I can avoid doing it and still get rid of them out of my presence, then I feel like it's a actual accomplishment for me." And then the dude goes and looks on the date. He's like, "Well, look at this bug," and squashes it. And I'm like, "Why would you do that?" Then he finds like, "Because it's so easy." And I was like, "Well, I don't not kill bugs because I don't think it's easy. It's actually contrary to the opposite of that. I don't like to do it because it's so easy to kill them. And what's the point of me doing that?" And so, long story short, he found another bug, killed him, and I never spoke to him again. A lot of people might think, "Man, you cut a guy off because he kills bugs." No, it's not about that he kills bugs. It's the fact that he went out of his way to do something that he knows that I don't believe in. And it's so against me of my morale that it's like, why would you do that? What else would you do that you know that I'm against, that you know that I don't believe in, and you will go out your way to do that? That's what you got to look at these days. Is like, at the end of the day, what does this action actually mean? And so, yes, I did cut him off because of the bugs. But again, you got to learning to identify red flags is something that I think should be more taught than anything. But I also believe I don't believe in red flags anymore. I believe in red stops. I feel like if I am pausing, then maybe I need to pause and think. So I think a lot of people can be associates. You can have many associates, few friends. I don't think you should have 1,000 friends because that's just not realistic. But for your life partner, oh yeah, you should be looking at it like you're recruiting for the big game. Okay. And so um you got to be open minded to that. You have to understand that the process of emotional intelligence and getting to emotional intelligence is something that just doesn't come easy, you know, and that it's easy to be manipulated if you don't know who you are. Okay. If you don't know who you are, you shouldn't be in a relationship. The first relationship that you need to focus on is the relationship with yourself. You need to understand who you are, understand where you come from, understand what you've seen. Some of us have never really seen a healthy relationship. Think of all the relationships. I remember I was reading a book and it had us write down every single relationship that we have ever encountered. And then it helped me to realize why I perceived things the way I did, what I expected men to be like, how I even viewed the idea of cheating was conducive based off of what I was used to seeing and hearing as a kid. And so I say all that to say that you want to take time with the most important relationship, which is with yourself. And that's something that will never, ever go away. So that's that. Now, to end the podcast, to end this show on our holistic topic is emotional safety is part of your well-being. Okay. Meaning that if you don't feel emotionally safe, let alone physically safe, if you're not physically safe, then you know you're not emotionally safe. But a lot of times we can be in relationships that haven't gotten to a point of physicality, right? Which is a good thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it also has to be in a place of emotional safety. Your safety in your emotions, meaning that if this partner does not allow you to express yourself, doesn't allow you to be who you are, doesn't allow you to have those feelings, then it's something that you should take a pause with and examine. Because, and don't get me wrong, your mind is powerful. You could have a good partner. You might not just know how to emotionally channel these things, right? And that's again part of knowing self. But your emotional safety is definitely a part of your well being, because if you are not emotionally in tune, then what can you do? You know, a lot of us can escape from this because, we hide behind our work, we hide behind our careers. If we have children, it's easy to just be in a task mode. But it's ask yourself that question that we asked earlier, not just the is attention always affection. What do you feel emotionally in this situation, in this relationship, even with yourself? You know what I'm saying? Because it is part of your well being. It is part of your well being. So I'm going to get out of here. We have a lot more to come. I wanted to get your opinions on these last few episodes before we go into our new season in the fall. Um, Again, I want to give a shout out to everyone who listens. I was like at a football game and I was surprised that one of them brought up my podcast. And I was like, you listen? Yeah, so thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sharing the good news about Z Truth Podcast. It is so, so definitely appreciated. Again, these shows are aired on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram through our snippets. But to listen to the full episode, you do need to watch it on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, give us a follow or subscription on YouTube. And then also you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, as well as whatever your favorite platform is. There's so many out there that we are on, but for the most part, the main ones are Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and and Amazon Music. And so let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you've experienced love bombing, if you've experienced um, being played or pursued, like not knowing the difference, if you've had these challenges. Again, thank you and shout out to, Short Quotes for your comment earlier. I would love your opinions on the rest of the show. I know it's a little late for a lot of you, including myself. I need to get some sleep. But until next time, I want to hope and pray that your week is filled with nothing but love, peace, and hair grease. Until next time, peace. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Z Truth Podcast. We hope today's episode gave you value and something new to think about. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join the conversation by following us on all platforms. Sharing is caring, so do us a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear the truth.